going to be exploiting the myths, which is what this book is all about. This book is basically Fry Size and Lies, telling you about all these closely held myths that I have seen over the course of 25 years. My women walk in the door with into my clinic and go, well, I believe this and I believe that. And I believe if I get on a scale and it shows me a number, that that's who I am. And so we're here to exploit these myths and to exploit your myths personally. So what we're going to do today is an open forum discussion, because I think people learn the best from one another. And you know what? Women have a lot of the same issues and problems and concerns and queries. So I'm going to open the door to discussing anything and everything you need to know about health, fats, dieting, scales, exercise, proteins, carbohydrates, etc., and most of all, diets. So any questions? Does everyone know who I am, first of all, and why you should even listen to me? I know who I am, but I mean what my background, yeah, I'm Deborah. No, my background. I've been a clinical nutritionist for 25 years this year. I have my undergraduate in biochemistry and food science, and my master's in counseling psychology. So I've been counseling primarily women, men as well, for 25 years, and I have the luxury and the gift of actually working with patients and having a concise, consecutive follow-through anywhere from 3 to 4 months to 10 to 15 years. So in that, with my clinical experience, I put together all this information that people have come into the front door of my clinic with, saying, you know what, I believe this to be true, and if I eat less, I'm going to lose more weight. If I exercise more and eat more, or eat less, I'm going to lose more weight, which is not the case. And I'll give you a case in point. I have a darling client I've been working with since February. His name is Ray. And Ray came in and needed to lose about 55 pounds, bring his cholesterol down, bring his high blood pressure down, get his liver working better, digest his food better, and start exercising. So pretty, very simple lifestyle problems or issues. So we took about 30 pounds off within the course of about 4 months, the first 4 months. And then in May, he decided not to listen to me anymore and take his calories down to 1,200 from 1,700 and exercise 7 days a week instead of the 3 days a week I had calculated out for him. And he proceeded in the course of that month of May to lose a ½ pound. So he came in and he said, what's wrong? I'm exercising like crazy and I'm walking the golf course. I'm not driving a cart. And I said, you're not eating enough. I don't want to eat anymore. Don't make me. And he's always fighting with me not to eat more or enough. And I said, if you're going to drive your car to Milwaukee versus Waukegan, you have to have fuel in your car. So you have to have enough fuel to burn fat, because the least important thing for your body to do to sustain you is to burn fat. It doesn't care. All it cares about is whether or not your brain works. You can break your food down into glucose, crank out your digestive enzymes, make sure you're making hormones to keep the body pumping, the central nervous system working. So he left and he said, well, I don't know, I don't want to eat 2,300 calories a day. I said, well, give me a week. I said, eat 2,300 calories and let's see what happens. So he did. He came back 10 days later and he lost 5 pounds. So that's the case in point. This book is all about getting just enough, because most of the people I'd say 99% of the time don't eat enough. And everyone thinks they do. Everybody, without fail, says, no, I eat enough. No, you don't eat enough. So this is about enough. It's not about your perfection, because I don't live in your skin. I don't have your children. I don't have your teenagers. I don't get up at night 5 times a night to feed a baby. I don't have a boss that's nuts. I'm my own boss, and I'm nuts enough. But, it's like all these different factors are going to play into whether or not you have ample nutrients in your system to help your body operate optimally, to help your immune system kick into gear optimally, and to keep your nose above the watermark health-wise and keep you out of the statistic profile. Okay? So that's just one of my case in points. We have tons of fun case histories. Does anybody have any questions about health or diets or fats? Don't be shy. Yes?
I'm trying to locate what the problem is. The French call it cellulite. I'm not sure if it's cellulite. It seems to be causing around the upper thighs.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's related to thyroid, the thalamus, adrenals.
Or what the issue is.
Yeah,
what have you investigated?
Since about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I'm now 63, so it's important to locate, I think.
So what type of testing have you done or exploration?
Other than just following Dr. Bruce West
Mm-hmm.
from Monterey, California, and his plan for what he calls the Mediterranean diet.
Okay, so you switched to the Mediterranean diet how long ago?
I had to start with journaling,
Okay.
which I learned
That's a good idea.
From a nutritionist at the doctor's office.
Okay.
Her comment was write down everything. It was basically for my daughter who happens to be in a wheelchair. Fall out of a high
Do you know how to calculate what you're writing down?
Well, what I was simply doing, not just putting whatever food supplements I was taking and the milligrams and the type of foods and how many measured by a regular tablespoon, measuring like the baking measure and the cups.
Can I just see your eyes real quick?
Yes.
Let me see your gums.
Yeah.
Pull your lip up.
Okay, up.
Okay, you're anemic, so I would deduce you probably do have low thyroid. So if your gums are really pale and the inside of your eyelids are very white, that means you have a type of anemia, and it could be either pernicious or it could be iron deficiency. Either one, both of those nutrient groups drive your thyroid. So when you ask, it's a multi-layered question that you just asked. So she said, the reason I have cellulitis is because of my endocrine system, basically. So is it my adrenals? Is it my thyroid? My pituitary? It's all of the above. Because my next book is actually all about hormones. And we are, especially women, because we're a little more complicated than our male counterparts, we are a hormonal cascade. And as women, we make over 580 hormones a day and almost 600 a day if we're menstruating. So those hormones have a symphony in the body, and if they're not working collectively, cohesively, in a cascade, then you're going to come up short. And when they come up short, all kinds of sidetrack, metabolic problems occur. And cellulite is just part and parcel of that. I mean, cellulite is also connected to not enough water, and it's connected to not metabolizing well, not utilizing your proteins well. A lot of people eat way too much protein. If you can't break your protein down, your protein ends up converting into more fat. And a lot of that fat, especially if it's saturated, tends to collect in the tissue, and it'll cause the pocketing and the puckers. So it's really important to look at your grams and your ratios. And again, this guidebook is just that. If you want to be your own nutritionist and not pay for one, every step of the way, everything I do with every single private client who comes in is in there. You can calculate your grams of protein, and it tells you what a gram is and where it comes from and how much it is. So it's not a diet book, but it's about kind of like calculating generically if you want to do that, or there's maps in the back if you can just calculate your total calories per day. There are maps of 1,200 in there, or 1,400, or 1,600. You can just follow it rather than doing all the work. So it's as benign and as easy as you want it to be, or as difficult as you want it to be, or explicit.
I found it's a process. None of us are perfect, and so I was literally writing down everything I put into my map from January 27th.
That's very impressive. I can't get clients to do that.
You'll go back and highlight where
Yeah.
eating something that wasn't appropriate. And
Do you exercise?
Well, that's the last goal.
Okay.
I had 7 goals, and that's the last one. But I needed to work on the heart. Lots of stress in Pennsylvania.
I'm sure if you have a daughter who's handicapped.
Yeah, and there were other issues, lots of issues.
Yeah.
Moving her to a county home where she was abused.
That's tough.
After a honeymoon stage, and so many
issues, yeah.
around the heart and emotion.
And you know what? That's a really good point. I mean, we all have our burdens in our lives, right? And some more than others. But, I always say that health is a process. And, there are people who come in and they're gung-ho and they're like, okay, I want to do this right now. And they completely clean up their act and get on track in 4 to 6 weeks. I have other clients who have the wherewithal to say, you know what, I'm going to be here a year. And I'm going to take this easy. So I tell my clients, you know what, do this any way that works for you. If you need to start drinking water, then for the first month, get your water intake up and make sure it's a clean source. The second month, take in more vegetables. The third month, take in more fruit, and then work on your fats and your fibers. I mean, so really weight loss and control of hormonal imbalances, which all play together in the metabolism of the body and your personal biochemistry, is based on hydration and water, on fats and healthy fats and oils, so you can make your hormones, keep your wits about you, not develop dementia, not lose your marbles sooner than you should, because your brain is 90% fatty acids. And it's all about fiber. I mean, if I had to say, what is it? It's that. And then exercising. Take the stairs instead of the elevator as much as you can. So it's a process, and you need to be really sweet with yourself, because I think most of us in America have really tough lives. I mean, everyone's too busy. Everyone's too crazy. Everybody's too overbooked, and everybody's too stretched in so many ways. So you need to be sweet. I mean, there's a spiritual component in healing yourself as well, and it's giving yourself love. And women typically are caretakers. So as women, we don't take care of ourselves, and pretty soon we become totally the caretaker of everything and everybody else, and we forget all about this. And the next thing you know, you wake up one day and look in the mirror and you're like, what happened? You know, how did I get this way? So the goal is to like put the brakes on, you know, give yourself a big hug, stand in front of the mirror and go, okay, this is going to be my goal for this year. And I tell my clients, if you take off 1 pound a week of fat, just by shifting your percentages of proteins to fats and carbs, you in fact will take off how many pounds in a year? How many is it? Thank you. You're a completely different person at the end of 6 months or a year. If you don't need to lose weight and you still do some of those wonderful things for your body, what will happen is you'll be a completely different physiology within 6 months to a year. Your immune system's going to bounce up. You're not going to become a statistic. So, you know, my goal in writing this book was to help people find their way through the craziness and the myths that are out there and to clear up the mazes and to actually like embrace good health, not become part of the statistics showing that by the year 2010, 1 out of 3 of us are going to have cancer in our lifetime. It's a crazy statistic. I think it's insane. So I completely will not, you know, bow to that. And I hope other people won't either. So thanks for sharing that. Any other questions? Yes, Rob.
How would you recommend someone start evaluating the amount of protein versus carbs?
It's all in the book. Yes, it is actually. Yeah, it's called Fry Size and Lies. And what you can do is simply, if you write this down, it'll probably help you remember, but you can take your weight and divide it by 2 or 1.5 to find the grams of protein that are appropriate for you per day, depending on your physical activity. So it's somewhere in that window. It's very simple. They're really simple formulas that I learned in, you know, food science class, you know, 30-odd years or 20 years ago. So. But that's how you find your grams of protein a day. If you're a marathon runner or you're a triathlete and you're trying to really bump up the volume on your physical activity, then you need more. But remember, after the age of 40, ladies and gentlemen, according to studies, we've pretty much run out of enzymes and hydrochloric acid is suppressed. So you need HCl or hydrochloric acid to break your protein down. If you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, then that protein is not fully utilized. It actually converts to fat, because proteins and carbs must convert in portion to a simpler sugar to be used by the brain as glucose. So, you know, the conversion factor and the utilization of foods that you eat is really important. And so after the age of 40, it's also denoted that we need twice as many vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants and 50% less calories versus 20 years old, in which case you have to supplement, right? So, you know, you can take it or leave it. I mean, I supplemented my entire life, and I think I quit from 40 to 50 pretty much. I just laid off. I was just over vitamins. You know, I did some generic morning things in my drink. And then I picked it back up when I turned 50 again, you know, just because I was starting to see the effects of, you know, aging a little bit. So we don't want to do that. Pardon? It depends. I mean, the body is really amazing because it will learn to, once again, make certain things if you give it enough food. So for instance, people who don't eat enough, which is typical, will stop or suppress their production of HCl because there's nothing there, or they'll overproduce it and they have GERD, which is, you know, the gastrointestinal reflux disease. It's one or the other. So in the human body, I always see manifestations on the low end or the high end, and both are the same original problem for the most part. But one thing you can do, if you, say you go to dinner and you end up eating like a 6-ounce steak, which is too much, because literally the body can only break down no more than 4 to 5 ounces of animal protein in one sitting. If you have more than that, then you're going to lose that, the ability to utilize it well. But if you have this meat or fish sitting in your stomach, in your gut, and you feel as though it's just sitting there and you're not breaking it down, you want to take like a half a lemon, cut it in half, squeeze it into a glass, and drink it, and it will act as HCl for the body. Cheap and simple. Yes?
I have hypothyroid. Is there any easy tips to lose weight?
What are you doing about the hypothyroid?
I'm on Synth right now.
Is it working for you?
I don't know.
How's your energy on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is great.
Probably around 7. I went off Synthroid for a year. In my mind, I really thought.
Ditzy, yeah.
But I lost weight. Now that I'm back on it, I'm like 190, and I want some easy weight to get.
Do you exercise? No? Okay. A couple things. I mean, synthetic hormones sometimes work for people. More often than not, they don't. So I would suggest you take a look at your blood test and look at your TSH, your T3, and your T4, because the 3 of them are synergistically they synergistically determine whether or not the pituitary hypothalamus and the thyroid are working together, and they have what they call a feedback loop. So you need to look at all three of those. Most doctors will only look at your T4, so you would ask your doctor to do all of them. And once you have that, then you'll see what you need more of. The Synthroid may not be your answer. You may do better on a natural thyroid supplement, so you might ask him to switch you out, you know, but you have to find a doctor who will work with you, number one. Other thing is, like, you need to kick your metabolism up, so you have to move it. How old are you, may I ask? Yeah, even if you, kiddo, get out and walked 20 minutes a day, or got a little mini tramp for 20 bucks at Sport Mart and jumped on it while you watch TV at night. Gently, gently, slowly, slowly. Just get your heart rate up. You know, move into a cardio cycle so you're actually burning fat. I mean, that's what I do in the winter. I just get the trampoline out and bop around, and the dogs jump up, and you know, they think, well, you know, unfortunately, but also the fatty acids. I mean, the problem with most of America is we've been fat deficient for how long? How many people here have done low-fat or no-fat diets in their life? Yeah, because it was so the thing to do from, like, what, the 70s, right? So the no-fat, low-fat craze has caused problems like hypothyroidism, fatigued adrenals, you know, mental fogginess, early perimenopause in women. Yes?
For one thing, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
You are?
And secondly, I was wondering about apple cider vinegar with your mother and what.
Okay, bear with me. Let me finish the fat thought first, okay? Is that better? Can you hear me now? They say the volume's a little low. Can you help? Is that better? Okay, great. Thank you for pointing that out. So when it comes to low thyroid function, do you take an armpit temperature in the morning? We're talking about your thyroid. Do you take an armpit temperature in the morning? Have you done that? Well, do so. 97.6 is normal. So your armpit temperature first thing in the morning, blink when you open your eyes before you get out of bed to go to the bathroom, should be 97.6. It's going to go up around your cycle during menstruation or ovulation. So you'll see a rising of maybe 1 to 2 points depending on your body. If it's not rising during that cycle, then you're really low. So typically you'd track your armpit temperature for 30 days and see whether or not it's elevated enough or not. 1 point below 97.6 indicates you have a 13% decrease in adrenal, thyroid, pituitary, hypothalamus push. So there's a feedback loop in those 4 glandular systems. If it's low, then you need to look at a couple things. What time you're getting to bed, lights out. How many people here lights out by 10 o'clock at night? I try. I'm not very perfect, but I try. So there's a rhythm that your body cycles to, and that rhythm is according to the rising and setting of the sun. It's called the circadian rhythm of the body, and it's only according to the rising and setting of the sun. And there's a great book you should get. It's called Lights Out. Wonderful read. Write that down. Seriously. Okay. It's a great read, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about hypothyroidism, trending towards diabetes, metabolic syndrome, fatigue, memory loss, depression, cancer, etc., based on your ability to sleep at the right time of the day or not. So the one thing we do with people who are hypothyroid is we put them to bed lights out by 10 o'clock in the clinic. And then they sleep an average of 8 to 8.6 hours a night. And if they sleep 8 to 8.6 hours a night, they absolutely start to see that thyroid come up over the course of about a month or two. Then we make sure they're getting enough total calories. And if they're not getting enough, then you're going to suppress your thyroid as well. So my chronic dieters, a lot of my women who don't eat enough, suppress their endocrine system, i.e. their thyroid, because they don't eat enough. So let's put it this way. Let's say you need 1,000 calories a day. That's a joke, because no one needs 1,000. Your brain is going to take 60% of that, or 600. Your heart is going to take another 200. Then your endocrine system is going to demand at least 100. So if you're eating, 600 calories or 700 calories, which most people are compared to what they need, your brain is not going to get 60%. It's going to get 30 or 40. So you start trimming efficiency and nutrition to each organ and system in the body. The last place you're going to go is like moving your bowels. So you'll see stubby stools, and you will also then not burn any fat. So people who don't poop, literally, every day, 24 inches, aren't eating enough. I know, isn't that amazing? It's a simple measurement. You don't have to measure literally, but yes.
Calories.
Yes.
Quality of calories should make a difference. I mean, if I'm eating all my calories
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's one thing to eat enough. It's another thing to eat enough of the right stuff. I mean, the American Cancer Society did a study 20 years ago now, nearly 20 years ago, and they said if Americans would just eat 2 servings of vegetables and 2 servings of fruit a day, they could offset the onset of cancer in 63% of the cases. That's 20 years ago. How many people eat like 4 cups of vegetables a day, or even 2? How many people here at least eat 2 pieces of fruit a day? Okay, everyone likes fruit pretty much, but nobody really loves those veggies. So, you know, you need to get those live foods into the system. So think about it this way, like, you know, I'll have clients who walk in and they'll say, you know, here's what I eat, and I'm like, well, you don't eat anything live. And literally 80% of them will be like, what's live? So, you know, yeah, it's kind of humorous, but on the other hand, it's like, okay, people don't know what live is. Live is pretty much anything that's eaten as it's grown and will bring nourishment into the body. So you have billions of cells, and these cells must have nourishment or live, colorful foods filled with nutrients to like excite the cells. So the cells are like little bats out of hell if you feel good. If your energy on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 10, I mean, I can run circles around the kids in my clinic. They're like, you need to clone yourself. I feel like, oh no, you need to eat better. You know, but I eat really, really well. So if you eat really well, you should have great energy. You know, I'm not 25 like most of those kids. I'm 50-something, so, and you can guess the rest. But you know what I'm saying? It's like all about nourishment and nutrients. Now, the other thing to remember is that you have to have these fats, because fatty acids, which have been completely maligned and kicked to the curb and bastardized since 1943 when they did the study on coconut oil and said coconut oil is a bad, 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 bad fat. Once they moved it into a trans fat and switched it out and fed it to animals, the cows, and in 6 months, something like 60% of all the cows had heart disease because they bastardized the fat, basically. So coconut oil's had a bad rap for over 60 years. Then we moved into the trans fat era in the 50s when everybody started eating trans fats because it was the hot thing to do. Well, trans fats are horrible. I mean, trans fats were created for transmission fluid in 1948. And I happened to have the good fortune to have this crazy man on my cable show years ago, Dr. Badurka, and we called him Dr. Berserka. He was a stitch. He had like the wild professor look. He had the kinky hair, and he always wore a polka dot bow tie with a plaid jacket just to irritate me. And he said I was a young scientist at the time, and what I did, along with my counterparts, scientists who were hired by the FDA, was to take soybean oil, because it was used as transmission fluid, and they would ship it in cars across the country in the summer, and because it was so hot, it would thicken up, and it would totally wreck the engines. We had to create a fat that could actually tolerate high heat and temperatures and sit for a long period of time without becoming sticky. So they created the trans fat, and what they did is they pulled the saturated bonds out, they put in a hydrogen bond behind it, and then shove a nickel behind it to make it stable, which is not meant for human consumption. And he said to me, if we had known at that time that the government was going to use hydrogenated fats in the food chain, we never, ever would have created it. It's not meant for human consumption. So, enter food companies, enter corporate greed, and pretty much what you have is a trans fat, like hitting all the shelves in America. Stabilizing the food, allowing your foods to stay on the shelf from anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 years without getting rotten. So, where's the sense in that? Foods, if they're live, don't have a long shelf life. That's the bottom line. So you need to move then back to the fats, and the fatty acids we're missing are the healthy fats and oils. And there's a small window of those. When you're looking at raw seeds, raw nuts, olives, you're looking at the products from that, which would be like hummuses and the oils from those raw seeds and nuts. And then you have things like, you know, goat cheese, which would be the lesser evil to dairy, and sheep's cheese and things like that. And that's pretty much the fat that you get to pick from. Yes? I'm not a soy fan. Yeah, soy is really one of the more contaminated foods in the U.S., along with corn. It has the greatest number of pesticides. Dioxin is one of those used on both soy and corn, and it's genetically modified. So if you do eat soy, my recommendation is that you absolutely look for soy products that say non-GMO, genetically modified organisms, because the GMO is kind of scary, and that's a whole other can of worms. Yes, young man?
Are all fats bad?
Are all fats bad? Do you eat fats? You do? Where do your fats come from? Meats? Okay, like animal meats, like chicken and cows? No. All fats aren't bad, and even the fats from animals are good for you. Your heart needs saturated fats. That's a really good question.
So what can I give my kids when they crave junk? When they want junk or they're having a slumber party and I'm not going to pull out goat cheese and
Right,
crackers.
right.
And sometimes I crave it too. So what's good for these guys that, you know?
Well, I tell my clients you can have your, cake and eat it too, or your martini and drink it too, as long as you put a fat in front of it. So like even doing raw nut butters for kids would be great. Like even if you used a cruddy Ritz cracker with trans fats and put some raw nut butter, you're going to counteract the trans fats to a degree. But I mean, the fats and oils are really important. But with kids, if they want sweets or they crave them like crazy, then we've got an issue. If kids or adults crave sugar, they're missing fats. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And 90% of everyone I see doesn't consume enough fat at all. So with children, they need flaxseed oil. So kids should be on flaxseed oil 3 times a day. For someone his size, you're what, maybe 60 pounds? Yeah. I would say that you need probably a tablespoon of organic flaxseed oil 3 times a day, always with a protein. And if you did that, then he could afford the sweets. Because kids have more lean muscle. He's very lean and filled with muscle. He has no body fat. So his metabolism is going to be faster, and he needs more carbohydrates than a little pudgy tyke.
And what about
Hi, welcome.
What about this trend to like all the chips now you can get like regular Cheetos or like baked Cheetos? Like, is that better?
Yes, because the regular Cheetos are the trans fats.
Okay.
The baked is always going to be better. I mean, it's really smart to be a savvy consumer and look at your labels. If you flip that label over and you see partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated, put it down. That's it. So when you go to baked, it's literally baked. And they'll use sunflower, safflower, olive oil generally with the baked products, which is healthier. Although when you heat a fat, you degrade it. It's destroyed. So you still need more of the good fats in the diet. So they can have their sugar, but I would stay away from corn-based products because corn is a huge allergen. And corn is, again, genetically modified. So the only corn I put in my body tends to be organic as much as possible. Good questions. Thank you. Anybody else have some questions about their bodies? Yes. Can you stand up, honey? You have a really soft voice.
You made a comment about when cooking oils you can destroy.
Yes.
That's what I'm curious about. With olive oil,
Yes.
that are you basically eating a lot of the once you heated it?
Yes, especially if it splatters. So I cook primarily with coconut oil. Coconut is a very stable oil at heat, high temperatures and high heats. So I'll cook with coconut oil a lot, and then ghee, which is clarified butter, would be my second pick. Olive oil I use for a light sautéing, but never to the splatter point. So if you want something kind of crusty and chewy and yummy, do the coconut oil. And coconut oil is just fabulous for the thyroid. It's wonderful. Just wonderful. I mean, I'll take coconut oil and put it in a protein drink in the morning with all my vitamins and, my essential balance oil, my fiber, and then I'll have like a piece of kamut bread maybe 2 hours later with coconut oil and nut butter on it. I put a couple berries on it, and it's like somebody turned the oven on. It just cranks up your metabolism. Yeah.
I just have one other question.
Sure.
I began my diet years ago because of complexion issues. And
Well, it worked. Skin looks great. She revamped her diet years ago because of complexion issues.
but I was under the impression at that time though that coconut oil
Is a bad boy. Well, that's a good question. It is saturated in part, but it has what we call a medium chain fatty acid component that takes precedence over the saturation. So it's the short chain, medium chain, and long chain fatty acid that's going to make a complete difference in how it's utilized and what is done with that oil in your body. And MCHs, medium chain, or MCFAs, medium chain fatty acids, crank up your thyroid and they burn fat. So they're marvelous. I mean, are you from Chicago?
Yes.
As well? So my next article in August is on coconut oil in TCW, Today's Chicago Woman.
And what brand do you use?
Omega Nutrition, I think. Yeah, it's the one. It doesn't taste like coconut, so I use it because a lot of my clients don't like the flavor of coconut. But it's very solid at room temperature. And if it becomes warmer in the room than 73 degrees, then it goes to liquid. But it's not a concern. It'll just solidify or unsolidify based on the temperature in the house. Yes?
We have a lot of salmon in the house, and I make salmon patties. I get the
Wild salmon?
in a can. The thing that is the brown stuff, I take off the skin. I mash the bones. And
So you use wild salmon to start with,
yeah.
not farmed.
Now, there's
Mm-hmm. It's like next to the fat, you mean? Yes. Yes. Yep, that's where most of the toxins will accumulate, in the brown layer and the fatty layer. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I take the skin off and the browns. I've been
Right.
doing it that way, but I
It just
didn't know
looks
if I
bad.
stimulate.
You're doing great.
Well, I thought maybe that's where the omega stuff. Maybe that's where the
No, it's in the meat of the fish, the flesh of the fish.
Oh, so
Yeah.
the brown stuff should come out.
Right, but remember when we broil or cook our meats, we're going to lose a lot of our fats. So a lot of people think if they eat salmon all the time, they're going to get all the fats they need. It's so not true. Once it's a cooked product, you're going to like desaturate that product. It's going to become dehydrated and void or pretty void of fatty acids. I mean, there's still a little bit in there, but you need to add these healthy oils back into your diet, literally.
It won't have much of any other fat in the salmon, right?
No. Mm-mm. No, but salmon's a good fish. I mean, you know, as long as it's wild and it's not farmed. Yeah.
Avocado oil,
Yes.
is that good?
Sure.
Okay.
And avocados are fabulous. Yeah, but don't heat it. It's too light. Like the lighter in color an oil is, the less you want to heat that oil. Because the lighter the color it is, the more sensitive that oil is, the more virginal. And so if you heat it, you'll completely degrade it. And when an oil oxidizes or breaks down, it becomes rancid very rapidly in the body, and it oxidizes your cells. Because the lipid membrane around your billions of cells is like 68% fats and lipids. So you want to keep nourishing your cells. You know how you look at people who have really beautiful skin and their cheeks are real poochy and like little babies have all that body fat? They have huge amounts of fatty acids. Now I'm seeing more and more kids being born with eczema. How does a baby become, born with eczema? Well, the mother has a fatty acid deficiency. And the grandmother probably had a slight one, the mother had a greater one, and now this baby shows up with eczema. So it's what I call the third generation delay. But fats and oils are mandatory. And then you see kids growing up in houses where the parents are on a fat-free diet and they drink Diet Coke. And these kids are going to the picnic tables and they're like scooping up the butter like this. Their little intrinsic knowledge base is just going, give me fats right now, because they need it for their brains. Hyperactive kids need lots of fats.
We use olive oil on our toast instead of butter.
I would use coconut or ghee, clarified butter.
Coconut actually be better.
It's fabulous. It's so delicious. That's all I use on my toast. Look at her. I don't believe you. It's wonderful. Oh, you'll love it. You'll never go back. You'll abandon, you'll totally cheat on olive oil.
But it's saturated.
It's a medium chain fatty acid. So get online and do your research, honey. You need to understand how these different mechanisms work biochemically. And saturated is one thing, but a medium chained fatty acid bond is completely different in the way it's utilized in the body. It's like saying, organic beef is bad. You still need saturated fats or you're going to end up with heart problems. You must have saturated fats in your diet. So for America to go all the way to the left, you're going to dry up and blow away if you only eat chicken and fish. You need to read my book. You do. And when you read it, call me. We'll talk. It's just, there's which is why I wrote the book. It's like people are killing themselves out of a desire to be healthy.
Cleaned up her diet. Complexion clear.
Mm-hmm.
Eating coconut oil, is her complexion going to go away with it?
No, not at all. And you can use sesame oil on your face. Organic unrefined sesame oil is fabulous for the skin. It'll completely take away all those little age spots you're getting if you're getting any. We had a girl who was actually an acupuncturist in our clinic, and she was all freckled. And this girl literally looked like someone took a paintbrush and went on her face. Her name was Charlie. And she was just like this pale ivory skin with freckles everywhere. And then one day I turned around and looked at her and I was like, where'd your freckles go? And she goes, oh, I've been using the organic sesame oil on my skin for over a year now. I was like, oh my gosh. It was unbelievable. So I switched. This is probably 5 years ago. Yes?
We keep using the word organic, and I'm not arguing with you, and I believe that, but I've seen that word overused and misused.
Mm-hmm.
The organic meats, the organic milk.
Overused and misused more so.
Organic milk that still has chemicals in them
Well, you're not just getting organic. I mean, you're not just getting hormones in milk. You get it in chicken and beef and pesticides. Well, there's something called the USDA rule, which means there can be only 3% drift in anything that's labeled with the green label. So it says USDA organic. It means that it is truly organic. So for instance, if you have a soybean field in Colorado that's organic, and next to it is a non-organic soybean field, there's something called drift, meaning there's an allowance, yes, for 3%. But let me tell you something. You're getting so many pesticides, so many herbicides, so many chemicals, so many additives in our food today. There's over 6,000 in our food chain used in America. There's over 600 pesticides used in this country. And now there are antibiotics and hormones being used on our animals that have never, ever been tested for human safety and efficacy. So if you have the money and you can do it, help the people who don't have the money and buy organic so everyone can have it. I believe it's our right to have organic. I mean, I remember growing up in America, everything was clean in the 50s. And it's not that way now. So hopefully that answers your question. Good. Yes?
Many people don't know that the good fats are cis structure.
Right.
And that's just the opposite of trans fats. The cis and trans fats, for a particular named fat, will have the same chemical formula. And you mentioned rancidity. Another term for rancidity is to oxidize, as you well know.
Right.
To oxidize the fat, causing a transformation from cis to trans.
Are you a biochemist? No. Okay.
No.
What is your name?
But I'm a resurrected one.
You are? Where do you practice?
I took biochemistry in 1970, and that was the last course I had, and I said I would never need it in medicine again.
Oh, please. Here you are.
So all
Hi,
you have
welcome.
to do to get a bad fat, and it's a little different. The trans concept is being overused in marketing, as
Right.
you well know.
Now everyone's
And
putting
this
no
is-
trans fat, no trans
All you
fat.
have to do is heat a fat up.
And you'll oxidize
and
it.
You're going to oxidize it and cause it to be rancid, and it will not be incorporated in cell membranes, and therefore it has no biologic use in mankind.
Right.
That's
Thank you for sharing that. So there's some validation, okay? I do cook because it's more stable and it won't oxidize as rapidly as olive oil. Pretty much anywhere. Go to your local Jewel and ask the guy to carry organic coconut oil for you. They will. That was an experiment, yes, 1943. No, if it's organic, it's not tampered with. Yeah. I don't know what Benecol is.
It's a spread. It's like a butter spread, but it lowers your cholesterol.
I don't believe any of those labels.
I know, it's kind of
Go for ghee. I mean, you know, the closer to natural and wholesome, the better it's going to be for you. Do you know about Benecol? Have you heard of it? Is it dangerous? It's like a margarine spread.
It's like a margarine, but they don't call it margarine, and it's $6 for this much, $6 or $7.
This is a really good myth. Can we for cholesterol? All right. People who generally have high cholesterol, unless it's familial and it's hereditary, have high cholesterol, more so like women go into menopause, they lose the ability to have certain hormones being produced, right? So we lose our estrogens, progesterone, testosterone. But as we also go on a low-fat or no-fat diet, what happens is your body must have fatty acids to make your hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hormones every day. And if you don't have fatty acids, then your body will literally make the one fat it can make for you, which is cholesterol. It is the only fat it can make to make your hormones. So you must have some type of lipids in the body to utilize to make these hormones. And if you going to go make more and more and more to save your life. Your heart pump. People ingest these healthy fatty acids, I watch their lipids come down by 30, 40 points within 6 to 8 weeks. It's remarkable. Remarkable. So I'm saying right now, embrace the fats. Do not fear them. Just make sure you do the right ones. And also remember, if you're doing an oil-based fatty acid, like an omega-3, 6, 9, like the Essential Balance is one of my favorite. You always, always consume a fatty acid with a protein because proteins have to carry the fat. They're not easily transported through the system. So you wouldn't take a tablespoon of essential balance oil with a piece of fruit because there's no amino acids in that piece of fruit. In other words, think of fat as like a little lazy fat boy, and he comes into the body and he lands on the stomach and he's sitting on a curb going, how am I going to get to the liver? So this protein comes along and he's a jock, right? He's got big muscles. He just came out of the gym and he's like, why, so for a little fat boy, do you need a lift or something? He's like, yeah, I can't get to the liver. So he says, jump on my back. So the fat jumps on the back of the protein. It's called cleaving in biochemistry. And then he's carried into the liver to be utilized, broken down, and taken apart. So you have to have those proteins for the oils. So I always encourage people to do the oils, whether it's organic sesame oil or the essential balance oil or the coconut oil, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner where there is where there's an amino acid present. And then you can do your other fat snacks like your hummuses and your goat cheeses and your sheep cheeses and your olives and your guacamole and avocado at your 3 snacks a day to keep your blood sugar balanced. Because remember, the coolest thing about fats, you guys, the most amazing thing biochemically about fats, is they never convert into sugar. So what feeds cancer? Sugars. 93% of all cancers, the jury's in, are caused by too many carbs and sugars in the diet. 93%. It's not genetics. So it's really important to denote that. Is that when you do a fatty acid intake in your diet and you up your fats and oils and you embrace them and consume them every day with regularity, you're changing not only your pH so cancer can't grow, but bacteria don't have the opportunity to grow in a more alkaline environment. An acid-based pH is going to really raise problems for your body, and things will happen. Things will go amok. So the fatty acids are mandatory. Yes?
I wanted to ask you, since you said, what about
Ooh.
sugar when Splenda's been, touted as the new best?
That's a great question. This young lady was asking about sugars, like since sugar's the problem, what about sugar substitutes? They're dangerous. I mean, they're horrible. Biochemically, I'll tell you a really cool case study and then I'll come right back to you, I promise. There was a young man who walked in my door about 12 or 15 years ago, and I used to work a lot with Dr. John Pangborn. I don't know if you know of John. He's just an amazing human being and helped me greatly with my nephew who was stricken by a DPT shot, became paralyzed from the neck down, but can't say enough good things about John because he helped me save this child's life. Anyway, so I referred to John Pangborn on this case study because I'd never seen anything like it. This man was like 6'8", he was 35 years old, he was a manager at Taco Bell, he wanted to lose 100 pounds like one of his friends had done with me. And I was like, well, you work at Taco Bell, I'm thinking that's your problem. Not the problem. He had dried chicken with the tortilla, no sour cream, none of the fat, salsa, but he drank person I've ever met like this, 5 gallons of Diet Coke a day. That's what I'm kind of like, oh, really? I see scurvy on people. I'm like, I try not to be reactive. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with you if I take you off your diet soda? You'll die. Your adrenals will go into failure from the caffeine withdrawal. So I was like, okay, well, I think what we'll do is we will wean you off your Diet Coke. We'll go down to 2 gallons this week, then we'll go down to a gallon, then we'll go down to a quart, and within 4 or 5 weeks, we'll get you off altogether. He went cold turkey. He dropped 32 pounds in a week. So then I'm like rubbing my eyes going, did I weigh this man? I go, okay, well, call John Pangborn. I said, how does this work? He goes, well, the body perceives the fake sugar to still be a sugar. He goes, think of your liver as having a Rolodex, and that Rolodex has a That memory card acknowledges and recognizes certain molecular structures. So when we go into a lab and we take a sugar molecule and we bastardize it and put a different funky tail on it, the body goes, kind of looks like a sugar, therefore it is. So it will break it down like a sugar. And so just like sugar, just like sodium, these fake sugars displace your electrolytes and push water out of the cell and into tissue. So he was bloated. He was enormously bloated. The next week, he lost 14 pounds. The next week, he lost 8. And then on week 4, he started losing 2 pounds a week. And this just happened again with one of my principals. She walked in. This woman was probably 2 months ago. She was just like that red, kind of ruddy, sweaty, wet. This poor woman, she was working with kids. And she was like, I drink like a bottle of wine a night and 4 cups of coffee a day, and I have about 2 six-packs of diet soda, and that's all she would eat. She wouldn't eat all day. She'd be so stressed. I was like, oh my God, what do we take away first? So I said, let's lose the diet soda since it's really bad for your brain. You can keep a glass of wine, and you get to do 1 cup of organic coffee. She dropped 13 pounds in a week. Yes? Stevia? You know, I'm not crazy about any of them. Although stevia is touted to be one of the better, I still prefer people would use like a raw honey, like YS honey, which is a great sweetener, because honeys are enzymatically dense if they're not processed and they're not liquid. So you put enzymes back into the body. And remember, after the age of 40, we're enzyme depleted in America because we have so much stress, we have such crazy sleep cycles, we eat the wrongful foods, we drink too many lattes, we have too much diet soda, and every time you put something in that's a culprit, you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul, basically. So by the age of 40, we start seeing the mid-body fat gain, you know, perimenopausal fluctuations where we shouldn't be going into perimenopause yet, et cetera. So I'm not crazy about anything that's created by man. How's that? Okay.
Taking the flax oil tablespoon at night.
Oh, wait a
seeing
minute.
true benefits.
Oh, wait a minute. Flaxseed oil. Okay, flaxseed oil is not broken down by adults efficiently after the age of 23. You can have a bit of it, but not straight flax. Women specifically need more omega-6s. Called gamma-linoleic acid, and it comes from borage and primrose oil. So my favorite oil for women and adults as well is something called Essential Balance. Flaxseed oil is for children. Children need tons of omega-3 from the flax source.
And what about krill oil?
I'm not familiar with krill oil. What is
It's
it?
like touted to be the best.
Do you know what this is,
omega-3 and
Dr.
fat.
Haas? Krill oil? Krill? Oh, well, if you have allergies, look out. Well, that would be another good question. I mean, for any of you who are interested, you can actually take my card out there and I'll email you my last article on flax and EPA fish oils that I just wrote last month for TCW. And the research shows basically that these oils are so careful about your source. Not in fact processed very rapidly after they're extracted from the fish, and they're not processed exactly with lots of nitrogen, is it nitrogen, packed on top of it, then that oil is going to go rancid very quickly. And then what you're doing is you're taking rancid oils every day. So if you take a fish oil capsule and it stinks, no. I mean, the best from what I've read, and I follow a lot of Dr. Patricia Kane's work, she researches fatty acids like crazy. This woman's amazing. She works with autistic children and reverses autism in kids within 2 to 3 years using fatty acids and minerals for the most part. So I would say you really have to be careful. And krill I would be careful with too. Again, call the manufacturer, ask them how long do they extract it from the whale or the shrimp or whatever, and how long does it take to actually get to the plant to get processed. Because if it's more than a couple hours, you're looking at a rancid fat. It needs to be processed immediately.
And Essential Balance, that's the brand.
It's my favorite, yeah.
Okay.
It does, it does. And everything's organic in that product, which is great too. And it's a 50-50 ratio of omega-6 GLA to omega-3s. It has primarily sunflower, safflower, sesame, and a little bit of flax in there. It's the last on the list. Yes? Y, capital Y period, S period. Sleep habits? Oh, honey. So you work 11 to... Well, it's really tough on your endocrine system. And you'll tend to, people who work that shift tend to get because to be in bed, lights out at 10 o'clock, you're actually ramping up your adrenal function, and that excess adrenal function will produce more cortisol, which excites the whole entire endocrine system, wears it out, makes it tired early, which is maybe one of the reasons we need to talk about that earlier issue you had. But it really knocks your hormones out of synchronization. And so what happens is once that cortisol elevates rapidly, because your adrenals are like two little babies going, I need to be in bed, you know, I'm supposed to be asleep. And when they're not put to sleep, they become overexcited, and they will crank up your insulin, which causes more insulin resistance and weight gain. So people who have that abnormal sleep cycle have a lot of issues with moodiness, a little bit of depression, weight gain, things like that. So you have to really, on a scale of 1 to... Well, that's good. You're all cranky together. So you need to really be faithful and fastidious with your food. You really do. Because, I mean, I work with stewardesses and emergency room docs and stuff like that, and firemen. And literally, on a scale of 1 to 10, I can get their energy to a steady 8, but they never really seem to go past an 8. But for them, from a 2, that's wonderful. You know what I'm saying? So we do it with food, and we do it with a lot of nutritional and endocrine support. So you need to do the specific nutrients that are geared towards supporting your adrenals, you know, like a stress adrenal package, lots of B vitamins, tons of vitamin C, because your adrenals will suck that up. Yes, one more question. Cod liver oil you need to be careful with. Most of the cod liver sources aren't that clean. However, I do use cod liver oil when people are thyroid. Hyperthyroid means you've been hypothyroid for years, and then you go hyper, and it means your body's just so low on fatty acids. So I actually triage the thyroid with cod liver oil. But you need to take it on an empty stomach, chase it with a little bit of orange juice, and then you can eat a couple hours later. Do you know any good sources for cod liver oil? Do you have a favorite source for cod liver oil?
What kind of source?
Cod liver?
I've been using Nordic.
Yeah, Nordic is a really good company. I mean, Nordic are the best fish oil companies around. They're clean. You can trust them. E. And she's got a company called biohealth.com, I believe it is. Yes? The oils, the healthy oils, yeah. Well, lean proteins, clean proteins, you know, hormone-free proteins as much as you can. No antibiotics, no hormones. Yeah, these hormones play havoc in our body, folks, which is why, it's a really good question, thanks, which is why you have to make sure that your protein sources are clean. And there is a great place you all need to know about. It's called Faith in Place. They don't have a store. It's 3 women who came together about 2 years ago to bring clean, hormone-free, humanely treated, kosher-killed animals to the table for consumers. And it's a Muslim, a Christian, and I think an Indian woman. Church group are amazing. They do halal blessings on their meat, so they lay their hands on the animals 3 times at these farms, and they're all in southern Illinois, and they have a saying that our animals have one bad day, and we all have it together as a family. So they bless the animals, which I totally believe in vibration, and I tortured and fearful. Faith in Place. And you can go online and place an order. They drop ship to your house for $15, and you can do a pickup. They have pickup points all over the city and suburbs for free. So it's really good, clean source.
So if somebody had a craving for like a lot of alcohol, is that the same as a craving for sugar?
It is, totally. So fatty acids, because they're like just siphoning off the fats and oils in their bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, you were just a wonderful audience. Thank you for coming and honoring me with your questions. I appreciate it.